Hi, I'm Claudine Cohen, Managing Partner of Value 360 at Cohen Resnick. Joining me today for this current episode of Dealmakers Unplugged is Vishy Venugopalan from Weave Growth Partners. Vishy, great to have you with me today. Looking forward to our conversation.
Hi, Claudine. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on the podcast and excited to be here.
It would be great if you could give a brief bit of an overview about Weave Growth Partners. I know you've been going probably now about 5 years, I think, but tell us a little bit about you and some of the strategies that you employ as you look to your overall investment thesis.
Yes, so I am a partner, one of three partners at Weave Growth Partners. We came together in late 2019, early 2020. So at this point, we have been around for about 6 years. And we take a tech and AI forward approach to investing in the lower middle market. So we have backgrounds collectively between Silicon Valley and private equity, and we use those types of value creation playbooks, commonly found in high growth Silicon Valley companies. We bring those to the lower middle market. Specifically, on the organic growth side, we help companies with things like sales enablement, demand generation, automating different business processes through tech and AI, and certainly for inorganic growth as well, in particularly fragmented industries. We are active in helping our portfolio companies consolidate some of their market. And we have been around as an independent sponsor for the last 6 years. And we focus on companies typically in the sort of $3 to $15 million of EBITDA in the business services, healthcare, and value added distribution segments.
Obviously, technology is part of your thesis, but AI certainly wasn't at the forefront like it is today. I mean, it's almost like you had this vision for what was going to come in the next 5 to 6 years, and you've based your whole thesis around your fund around AI and tech, and I think today AI definitely has taken a is probably the focus, much more the focus than just straightforward tech. A new system, maybe it's an ERP system, maybe it's a CRM system. It's now just really looking at how AI can help you enable the business in that value creation process. So, just talk a little bit, starting with AI at the deal sourcing, because it sounds like it's AI at the Weave Growth Partners level in everything you do as a fund. And then once you've got your portfolio companies, it's also driving that AI strategy through to the portco. So, when you start to look at deal sourcing and that, can you talk through a little bit about how you're employing AI to differentiate and help you through the process?
We ironically, when we started Weave, it was very much so. I have a background in venture capital. Definitely saw kind of digital transformation and early innings of AI companies when I was in my last investing role in venture capital. So certainly, yes, there was a sense that that was coming for the entire economy, particularly the lower middle market, where there's a lot of really interesting companies that could be transformed. But yeah, speaking about how we use it within Weave for deal sourcing, we view AI as really a tool that enables, mass personalization at scale. So what we are able to do is to reach out to different, segments within, areas of our interest. And when we look at the lower middle market, we're a thesis driven investor. And so when we form a thesis in, let's say, um, you know, uh, BPO or something of that nature, we do a thorough review of the market and figure out what are the different segments within sort of this broader category, and develop a thesis for each of these sub segments. And then what we do is personalize messaging outreach over email and LinkedIn to different business owners based on the, what their company does, and also kind of a bit about some details, for example, from the company's specific profile. So um, we find that a lot of business owners, the types of ambitious business owners that we want to partner with, understand that running a business is lonely. It's a lonely endeavor. They have founded a business from zero and got it to, let's say, 3, 4, 5 million of EBITDA, generally all by themselves. They really have that not that many thought partners and capital partners to discuss, areas of interest in their industry. So what we have found has worked really well in our experience is, taking the uh, aspects of the thesis that we have developed and personalizing them to specific areas that the target business is operating in, and even mentioning a couple of kind of directionally insightful things communicates to the business owner that we have looked into the space, we're not tire kickers, we're not there to waste their time, and that we could be not just a capital partner but also a thought partner as they look to grow their business. So we view, for example, we reached out to our the last portfolio company that we brought into the portfolio is a company that came out as a result of one of these proprietary approaches, where we struck up a conversation with the seller and the CEO on the basis of an initial email, and then built up a relationship and eventually closed a transaction.
That's great, and it must be working because I think you've done about five portcos since inception. So once you've identified and sourced a whole lot of potential targets, and that I believe that the next step for you is to use AI to really screen the businesses and get into a little bit more detail around the underlying business, because it's this funnel, right? You start at the top of the funnel and slowly it whittles down.
Yes, so AI continues to follow us through in our workflow once we have a conversation going. So we also get deals from intermediaries, M&A, sell side M&A advisors, or business brokers in individual segments as well. So we what we use AI for deal screening as well. So we've maintained an investment checklist for a while within Weave, where we have certain specific things that we look for. Things like, for example, that the business owner intends to stay on and not retire at the close of the transaction, etc. Um, and so we've had this checklist, and we would manually um, evaluate each opportunity against this checklist. But more recently, we have been able to automate it using AI agents, and we've added in a few tweaks to the overall screening process so that it is able to surface potentially difficult to or non-obvious insights from across a data room, or for example, alert us to broader kind of industry trends or public comps happening in that space that we should be aware of. Uh, we also use it to generate, quick financial models for any kind of new opportunity, so we can quickly get to a determination of whether it makes sense to pursue quickly. We also then get, an initial list of areas to dig into in management team meetings. And this is something that has helped us really, zoom in on specific areas that, are worth digging into for that specific opportunity. We already get a baseline first draft of really good questions. And then, based on what those questions bring up, we're able to focus how we focus our diligence in the conversations and upcoming subsequent conversations with the business. And this really works in many ways, like AI generally works for a lot of these businesses, right? Like, it lets you focus on the things that matter, the questions that matter, while generating a good enough first draft, so that you don't have to sort of start from a blank slate.
But I assume, though, I mean, and just like anything, the output from AI, there's still a level of your kind of review and making sure that it all makes sense and checking it or benchmarking it against something. You're not just accepting the AI output at face value.
Absolutely. So it has continued to get better and better. But our very first attempt at this was probably back in 2023. This was even before Claude, right? So um, and Claude has really shown some really cutting edge work more recently. But yes, in our very first attempts, we very quickly learned not to take the output at face value and really review it. And this is generally ultimately principal investing is um, uh, a uh, kind of an endeavor where you have to have a point of view, and that point of view and that conviction needs to come from you. I mean, you can't rely on an AI to generate that. So we are very particular at Weave that yes, we use AI as sort of an initial first draft type of thought partner in terms of brainstorming and researching a space. But any output that we generate from there, definitely needs to be properly reviewed. We really treat it as an extremely smart, uh, new graduate or intern who is incredibly smart, usually makes the right calls, but often has to be reviewed thoroughly by like a senior partner in an investment firm.
And maybe just one of the last things to hone in on is a lot of, and you touched on it a little bit. You've got sellers who, founders in a lot of instances, who have built their businesses from scratch. They could be very street smart entrepreneurs. Bringing you in now is, well, we're taking this business to the next level, professionalizing. How do they react to the whole AI strategy initially, and how do you convince them about the value of AI and kind of get them to embrace AI as a strategy going forward? Because most of them are going to be, if not, in fact, not most, but if not all, are going to be your partners going forward.
Absolutely. And it's a very important question and something we specifically look for when we, a qualitative assessment that we make when we initially connect with a business, right? Which is how, what is the stance of the seller towards, and, how they view technology and AI as a value creation, avenue within the business, right? So we tend to find that uh, a lot of the folks that we eventually end up having any deep conversations with that go any distance are already folks who have been thinking about at least broadly technology, if not AI, and how to transform their business using that. So we find that a lot of the folks that we speak with recognize that there is a need to transform their business using technology, but may not necessarily know sort of what's the first step to take. So they obviously are very on top of business metrics, and have a very good intuition about their business, far more than we could ever have. But what we bring in is a complementary type of perspective where, through our experiences from before, both my partners as well as myself, we have all been entrepreneurs ourselves before, and so that tends to be, that tends to take us in a pretty far in conversations with our business sellers, and we are able to have that level of empathy for the entrepreneur in terms of really what would an entrepreneur in their place want to be doing. They want to be growing the business. So we don't pitch technology first or lead with technology or AI. We look for what are the outcomes that that business is looking to achieve, specifically sales growth, or is it efficiencies in their business processes, or understanding their customer better. And these are all that's kind of where we start, and then we work from there to show and educate our partners how something like the analytical heft of AI, or the automation capabilities, or the personalization, these are all things that would enable them to achieve those objectives.
Vishy, this was really interesting. I mean, we don't have time today, so we'll have to do a part two. to learn more about how you're using AI in the value creation process post close, because I'm sure it doesn't just stop once you've sourced, screened, and closed the deal. But thank you for your insights today. I really enjoyed it. Is there anything just in closing that you would like to add?
I would just say that it is even looking at the last 6 months, the pace of change within sort of how uh, AI is improving is really something to behold, and it is uh, you know AI is not perfect today. There, it definitely has its flaws, but it's good to remember that what you're seeing today is the worst it's ever going to be, and it continues to improve, um, day week by week, month by month, and uh, I'm just really very um, very enthusiastic and excited about uh, how AI can really transform the lower middle market, and and that's why we come to work every day at Weave, and believe that we're really at the very beginning of a pretty substantial transformation.